Just give me a second. I'm murdering these mages. They have 1 and 2% HP, and then I will have finished another Lufenia. HP drain thrust.
Gino, you're dropping this game after this podcast is over, right?
Yes.
I'm not.
One of them's dead. Get fucked. Yes! Yes! I beat another Lufenia. Okay, I am done. I finished another Lufenia. 4 down. Okay, let me do a countdown.
Okay, man, are you ready to go?
I'm ready to go. Now, come on, now crank this motherfucker up.
Break it down like this.
Hello, Internet. Gino, that Pinguino Greco here again with another episode of Deep Listens, and it's time to hop back on the Ranking of Fantasies. We have convened a panel of Final Fantasy experts to discuss where Final Fantasy Opera Omnia sits on our total list of the Ranking of Fantasies. Joining me, as always, is my eternal compatriot in this dark, dark task, Chris ZombiePie Redacted.
The cow goes moo!
We are also joined by Final Fantasy fan, Jeff Rude.
Hi, yes, I am familiar with the franchise Final Fantasy from Square.
And joining us as a special guest, because Opera Omnia is an addictive thing, and if you play it for a little while, you might get into it enough to be on a podcast about it. Regular host of the Deep Listens podcast, Em Paladino. Hello, Em.
Hello. I'm always up for a gotcha, because I have an addictive personality, and so this was right up my alley, and I went real hard. Some of us can relate, others not so much.
Exactly. So, before we get started on Final Fantasy Dissidia, Opera Omnia, just shout-outs, our normal plugs. You can get at the show on Twitter, at Deep Listens Pod on Twitter. ZP, you're eating into the microphone. Please stop. Deeplistens.libsyn.com. We've got our comment sections.
I wasn't eating. That was just a warning.
Oh, no. Deep Listens. At Deep Listens Pod on Twitter, deeplistens.libsyn.com. We have comment sections, and deeplistenspodcast@gmail.com. You can get in contact with us there via email. You can also support the show on patreon.com/deeplistens, where you'll get access to our Discord. Just a shout out, we got a new patron last week. Thank you so much for supporting the show. So without further ado, that horrible noise probably means you're going to derail this show with some horrible food thing. Is that correct?
Yeah, no, it's not horrible. You know, we've got 2 Italian Americans in this podcast, so I decided to go out of my way and buy something that was Italian American.
The way you pronounce that makes me mad.
Why is it gotta be
That's how my father raised me.
I don't think that's true.
Okay, I'm just gonna. What do you do if you want to honor the Italian American people? You buy a stick of salami, right? So I bought a stick of salami. Normally, I get the pre-sliced stuff because I don't know how to eat salami when it's on a stick. But I was, perusing my fine cured meats, and I decided, I think that this is going to be a spicy podcast where I think we're all going to draw lines in the sand, proverbial lines in the sand. So I decided to get a spicy salami stick, which I'm now just going to bite into, I guess. So this is a Calabrese Picante Italiano. Sure. It's red in the inside. I can smell the spices.
Question. Wait, before you bite into it like it's a... Damn it.
I will say, for the record, I enjoy Calabrese quite a bit.
I used to when I ate meats. How wide is this in diameter?
Yeah. Okay.
Did you cut it?
No.
I think he's just biting into it like a goddamn animal.
Because if it's a sausage like the
salami, going to Christian hell.
If it's the salamis that I was used to, they're usually about 2-3 inches in diameter.
This is like paper.
Yes, you need to cut it. There's skin on it. You take the skin off.
Sausage, you Philistine. My God.
You cut it. You need to take the skin off. Fucking idiot.
I'm glad we dealt with this before the podcast.
Yeah.
Oh.
I sure do love these fun surprises.
Okay. Other than the paper shit, this is pretty good. I'm gonna take a bite out of it, but I'm gonna make sure there's no paper on it.
No. Fuck it. Cut it.
Cut it. Use a knife.
Use a
You
knife.
want nice
Cut it
thin
into
slices.
a pepperoni.
Yeah.
You want thin slices.
You layer it onto some cheese and like a crushy guy, like a cracker.
I don't even know if he
Well, I
hears
guess
us.
he just learned about Triscuits, so like maybe we're really pushing it.
This is like really
Good meat that you're like destroying,
it's good made.
treating with all of the dignity of like
I don't.
a Whopper or something.
I don't get why people say steak's good. It's really bloody. Like there's just blood everywhere. What's going
Yes,
on?
we're-
There's the
Styrofoam
spices in
on
this.
the
It tastes
bottom.
like it's got cumin, paprika probably. It's really red.
Put it on the box.
You remember that guy who left a comment that was like, they should put a tag when the actual podcast starts?
Yes.
I'm agreeing with that guy.
That was pretty good.
How many
Yeah,
stars?
I like that. That was good. That was good shit.
How many stars does the salami get?
I would probably give it. So it's not as good as the Stroopwafel. That's probably like the S tier, the best thing I've ate on this podcast segment so far, right? But I like the spice game on this. I like the herbiness in this. I have no idea what they did to make this salami taste this way. I still don't.
Pork sausage with like Calabrian chili oil, I think, is like one of the main additives to it.
Whatever.
Just the fat.
It's good. I'm still going to give it a 5 out of 5.
Hell yeah.
Probably going to remove this paper shit on it. But
Yeah, really.
But I mean, once you remove the paper, like I could like treat it like a lollipop, like rip
No.
the paper off, eat another bit, rip the paper off, just take a chunk off, like hom nom 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 nom.
It's almost like they
I got my
intended it.
sticks of meat all up in my face, Gino. What are you gonna do to stop me?
I can't.
You own knives, correct? You know how to... This isn't a... You're just deciding to do this.
I hate that I'm making this reference, but he is that couple of like millennial people from Parks and Rec, but one man, just eating this off of a Frisbee or something.
Oh.
Yeah.
You know, not even gonna lie, Jeff. If you come to my place, you'll see me from time to time eating off the lids of Tupperware.
Okay, well, hey, I have a spot too.
Okay. What's your weird thing that's going to disrupt the show? What is it?
I played Final Fantasy IX and beat it.
Oh, hell yeah. The best one.
The
The best one. On the list. Number 1.
Yeah, okay.
It's right there at the top.
It is at the top of this. You can keep this one. I don't know. Everything up through like disc 2.5 I enjoyed quite a bit. I think the turn to the cosmic stuff I realize they do it in like most of these games, might have been the worst one. I think Vivi is a fine character and has a nice arc, and I like that a lot of the dialogue between characters not only was well written and enjoyable pretty much from start to end, but they actually developed over time and formed relationships and changed and transformed. So all that's really good. Zidane should go to prison. Amaranth is like maybe the worst character in the series, and the breadth that covers is like real big.
That's
Like he's terrible. When you go to that castle and he's like, oh, I'm gonna go prove a point or whatever, and it's like, all right, whatever, I guess, go into the weird maze of pictures. You do whatever it is you did there, get some mirrors. I did, in fact, pay attention to this game. And then leave, and then the game's like, oh man, you have to go back and get this fucking chud with his truck nuts and his, like, stabbing westward tattoos back out of there. I almost just was like, I think I can just watch the rest of this game because I don't want to rescue this character. He doesn't deserve it.
Did you see his backstory?
No, so
Gino,
that's the
let
other
him speak.
dumb thing about this game. Like, I actually think that, like, plots, like, I can't sit here and, like, poo-poo on the whole thing. It tells, like, a reasonably good story up to the dumb cosmic planet dimension thing. but hiding it behind like literally optional cutscenes was just kind of clunky, and I get what they were trying to do, but 15 years later those would have just been in the like actual text of the game and not like hey, you want to hit select here or you'll miss really clutch stuff. So I watched and endeavored to see most of those, and I never triggered the one from Trano where the thing happens that I know it's there. And I tried to seek it out and tried to trigger it, and it did not come up for me. I don't know what I missed. But yeah, so between that and some kind of broad gripes with combat, by the end of it, I was just like, you know what, let's just turn on this 10,000 damage thing and just get this done, because I don't want to look at this anymore. Which is a shame, because I up to a point, I was actually having a very good time with it. So,
do you want me to fill in the gap in Amaran's backstory?
No.
He got basically racially profiled by Zidane at a certain point.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know of the thing, and like it makes that character better, and the fact that it's not just in the game without being able to accidentally miss it is a poor decision. I think.
Yeah, he's very clearly the worst character.
Yeah.
By a country mile. He gets the least development.
I would say he's probably one of the worst characters in general.
Yeah.
I like playing as him. He's my favorite to play as.
The fiddliness of this game reminds me of 5. I think it's kind of 5 adjacent. I would put it, let's say, below 5, and pending me actually finishing it someday above 12. But I don't know. I need to play 12 now, so I don't know. It's not my favorite. It's easily my least favorite thing on the PlayStation of this series, but it's not bad. It's actually fine. There's very good redeemable things about it, so that's it. I looked at my copy of it on a shelf, and I actively thought about maybe selling it. I don't know what that says about me, but
you're a monster. That's what it says.
It's the green label one, so who gives a shit? Probably just get a black label one, honestly. But anyway, it's done. My 7 great deeds of Hercules of finishing all of those PlayStation Square games is now completed, except for like Parasite.
Gino.
What?
Day 121 of me asking you to watch Knicks games on League Pass.
Why is this coming up? We're in the middle of the show.
Because they're good. They're going to make the playoffs. Coach Tibbs taught him a thing or two about playing ball.
No, we have to talk about Dissidia. Stop it.
Yeah. So, Opera Omnia.
He dunked over Vucci Main.
Yes. Okay.
Also, maybe we should address the elephant in the room about Fiat Rhythm.
Yeah. So first off, Jeff, you picked 2 different games. You picked Fiat Rhythm, which is a 3DS exclusive now because it's, I guess, been removed from the Apple store at this point. So there is no way for me to get it without buying a 3DS and then buying that game digitally or waiting months to try and get it shipped to me from one of the few stores that still has it in physical copy.
And then the other thing on top of that is that they are literally shit canning the entire DSiWare store, and most of it.
3DS stuff is still fine. The weird DSi whole thing.
Hey, Jeff, do you mean to suggest that Nintendo has a really bad track record of keeping their games legally available on online platforms and platforms in general?
They've done this to themselves. It's a strange thing, but
it has happened every single time since the OG Wii.
Exactly. So because of that, Fiat Rhythm was too expensive to procure, and I have a feeling if we just wait longer, it'll just come out on the Switch.
Oh yeah, I think that it is. I plan to publish something making predictions about future announcements and reveals for this year for Square. I would say a softball pick right now is Square will announce Fiat Rhythm on the Switch, and then I would also hazard to guess that all of the DS ports of the classic Final Fantasy games, be it 3, 4, I think there's even that 5 port. I think all those games are coming out on Switch digitally at some point.
That is
I mean, they should.
Yes.
Do you think they're going to be one thing or individually?
Oh, I think that they're going to release them individually. There's no precedent for them putting it in a pack.
Not since the PS1.
1 and 2.
Not since the PS1.
They did the, 7 and 8 pack?
It's on a single cart for the Switch, yeah.
Yeah.
Which is kind of a wild value, I guess, if you like those games.
Yeah.
I think that the only thing about Square is that as someone who has been following Square Enix's track record in terms, and we will talk about this, in terms of game preservation on mobile platforms, their track record is atrocious. they are kind of like a fighting game developer, which is we move forward and you come with us and we leave everything else behind us in wastes. But that also leads us to like this weird discussion of like Square Enix is like a purveyor and creator of lost media almost on par with Nintendo. It's bonkers.
Relatedly, this is why we're not doing All the Bravest, because it does not run on the current release of Android. So there's that
but
answer too.
Mark my words, Gino, that game is the literal worst thing. It is worse than Final Fantasy 13. It should be condemned as the worst thing to ever come out of the Final Fantasy franchise.
One day we'll get to rank it, but that's not today. Today we're talking about Dissidia Final Fantasy. Dissidia : Final Fantasy Opera Omnia. So we're going to push Theatrhythm off because, one, Theatrhythm is hard to play and expensive for me to acquire. Two, it's probably going to come out on mobile at some point if we just mobile or Switch or some modern console if we just push for a while. And three, Dissidia Opera Omnia is way longer and way more of a game than we had any expectation that it would be. We thought that we'd play it for like 10 minutes, like Mobius. We'd play it for a few hours and then be done because there's not any content to it.
Yeah, dead ass. This was a meme pick, and boy, really, really over-delivered for that.
Yeah. So, Jeff, since you picked it, why don't you explain what is Dissidia Final Fantasy Opera Omnia?
Okay, so
I can do it.
No, I'm going to explain it in a way that makes no one happy, as opposed to just one of you. I actually think I'm shocked at how good of a pairing it was with Theatrhythm, and it's a real bummer we couldn't play it, because Theatrhythm is a game that just, all it has is like trading on nostalgia, and it's like a reasonably fun but kind of repetitive game. That is basically what this is. It is a very, 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 this is Jeff's take on it, light RPG set in a very like top level meta Final Fantasy. It's actually set in the Dissidia universe, which I guess is its own canon continuation thing.
Mm-hmm.
It has standard RPG mechanics. It also has some pretty standard gacha mechanics. There is just a shocking amount of writing in this thing that will string you along for doing what amounts to very straightforward additive and subtractive math and making numbers get bigger for just as long as you want. It's a nostalgia trip. That's its main strength.
Yeah. So Dissidia, it came out in 2016 for iPhone, iPad, and Android. Originally in Japan, then it came to the US. It's been out globally for a few years now. It is developed by Koei Tecmo and Team Ninja.
Correct.
Who you might know from the Ninja Gaiden and Dead or Alive.
Team Ninja's done some Musou stuff, haven't they?
Yes. Ninja Gaiden that, but okay. So a couple of things that I want to chime in. Team Ninja in particular have made multiple video games in their modern rendition in the post, I think, Itagaki era, where, especially on mobile platforms, they have made this type of game, and even, let's say, their Dead or Alive games, they have been excoriated in terms of like the microtransactions, DLCs, and season passes. So this mechanism, this way of selling games or structuring games, they have done this, and they have done this time and time again. Because, and this is something that if you want more information, you should really tune into the 8-4 podcast on Giant Bomb. Japan, outside of like what we would call the tentpole developers, for the last 5, maybe even if you're being generous, 10 years, made a hard switch to mobile and digital development in terms of these kind of smaller games that are sold on phones, tablets, and other kind of like handheld platforms, non-handheld though, not DS games, that are this, which poses a lot of questions. I want to say this right off the bat. I think it's important for me to say this. I am morally and ethically opposed to any and all forms of gambling. This is going to come up throughout the podcast, but I feel like it is important for me to just make that known. And my perspective on this game is obviously different as a result of my moral and ethical objections to gambling. Okay?
Yes.
Yeah, I'll kind of parrot that a little bit. I had a family member who dealt with a very severe gambling problem that kind of impacted a lot of the people around them, myself and my nuclear family included, for years. So it is something I like, kind of gets my hackles up a little bit. But yeah, to the mobile part of this too, I guess my big meta takeaway from this is that weird dinosaurs and the thing that we like is dying or changing in a way that I guess I hadn't really grasped. Like playing this game, and it is a game, like it's a playable thing, it has mechanics you can engage with.
There are some gotchas that aren't.
Yeah, but this is pretty game-ish, and it's also a free thing that is on your phone and is completely painless, and you already have a phone. The idea of trying to sell people under a certain age, I guess, on like go spend X amount of dollars on PC hardware or a console and play something that is like, frankly, not all the way dissimilar from this free thing and maybe has as much, if not less writing. Like, this is where gaming actually is, and I don't think we notice or pay enough attention to it. Like, console gaming is a weird bubble economy that exists off in its own little thing, and I think most of the rest of the world is playing games on phones like this.
And obviously, this Switch, and this again is a topic that's been on the 8-4 podcast, this Switch happened in Japan far earlier than North America and Europe. This Switch happened decades ago, even. I mean, like, Fate Grand Order is the highest grossing video game in the history of Japan. It will likely still be the highest grossing video game for all of 2021. And that game came out like 4 or 5 years ago. So this is probably one of, if not the biggest video games we've played in a while in terms of user base, online community, the amount of support it's received. It's a big deal.
I don't even think there's anything that would be even close. Like Final Fantasy XI, oddly enough.
Because of 20 years.
Yeah.
I mean, you could obviously say the actual biggest game that's the biggest moneymaker, it's not Final Fantasy XIV, it's Brave Exvius. That's a whale that we will eventually have to slay on our boat with our spear and harpoon. Brave Exvius is like the biggest video game that Square Enix has made in the last 10 years.
One. Yeah. I've delved into it slightly and I immediately pulled back out because I could not. So that I forgot about it entirely until you brought it back up. Seeing that in communication with this game would be interesting, but I don't think we're gonna go to bat for that one.
No. And it's important to realize like that's the one thing that I actually don't want to praise for, but I will concede.
We can go into that when we start talking about the gotcha stuff.
Sure, but that's exactly where I'm going, is that this game is free for the most part, and it is less exploitative than what I would say is the industry standard for gacha games.
Absolutely.
Yes. So in terms of mechanics, this game, it takes the fighting game Dissidia mechanics and applies it to a turn-based RPG. Kind of similar to Child of Light in how it deals with turns, or the Penny Arcade RPGs.
Yeah, you're right.
But
then Child of Light is inspired by Grandia and Grandia 2 especially. But yeah, you're right.
Little resonance of Fate in there, I guess.
Sure. Yeah, the continuum process of resonance.
The Penny Arcade on the rain-slick precipice of darkness.
Penny Arcade is just straight up Grandia 2.
Yeah, so it uses that turn system, and the Dissidia combat, how it worked was you would have basically two numbers for your character. One is your HP, your health points, and one is your brave points. Your brave points function as a kind of secondary health that is also your attack. So when your brave gets higher, whatever that number is that your brave is, if you hit the HP attack, that is how much damage you will deal with your HP attack. And then once you use an HP attack, your brave will go down to 0, at which point you are vulnerable to being broken, which is what happens when that number gets reduced to 0. If your brave gets reduced to 0, you are stunned for a turn, basically. You get knocked back a turn. Your attacker gets a bonus to their brave number, and then any attacks that hit you while you're in a broken state deal critical damage, so they're way more powerful too. So this game, basically, its fundamental mechanic is build up your brave until you can attack, then you HP attack, and you try to do it in such a way where you're not left completely vulnerable to what your opponent's going to do. And the game also allows you to see what the enemy is going to do, or who at least they're targeting. You don't get to know the exact attack they're doing, but you get to know, are they targeting you? Are they targeting themselves? Are they targeting your entire team? So you can kind of plan ahead to try and sculpt your turns where this character's not going to get attacked, so they're free and safe to HP attack. If I break this enemy at the right time, I'll get an extra turn, and so you're kind of juggling turns and juggling this mechanic. And then the game has almost, I think, 100 playable characters at this point from across the Final Fantasy universe. There are characters from 1 through 15, Tactics, Crystal Chronicles, Type 0, and I think those are the main series that are covered right now.
Yeah, we played the fun game of what franchises are not represented, and it's like Spirits Within, Legend of the Crystal, and maybe
Brave Exodus?
Brave Exodus, I think, is been announced later.
Okay.
But the Turk people from Before Crisis, maybe?
Yeah, not the rando extra Turks.
I think there's like over 150 characters right now.
Which I will just say that I actually found that to be a problem because I just got analysis paralysis in seeing that large cast and didn't know how to make an informed decision in terms of party composition. That led to kind of one of my first issues of butting up against the gacha mechanics, which is so I created a party that was later revealed to be inefficient.
Before we go into that, can I just finish the mechanical
Sure.
thing? So every character has unique attacks. They will have 2 unique attacks that they start with that kind of draw from whatever game they come from. And then, depending on what weapons you get them, they can get access to an EX move, which is like most of your normal attacks, you'll have a Brave attack that just does Brave damage, an HP attack that does HP damage, 2 special moves that are unique to the character. Those moves can either do Brave damage, they can boost stuff, sometimes they're HP attacks, it depends. But those 2 are limited in how many times you can use them in a fight. And then if you get the appropriate weapons, there are EX moves, which fill up slowly over the course of the battle. And then every time you use them, the meter, ticks down to 0 and starts up again. So you can use those as many times as you want during a fight. You just need to wait for the meter to fill. There are LD attacks, which are kind of special moves that are more powerful than their basic attacks. And then there's a burst mechanic, which kind of sets the character who uses it into a burst mode where they just get to wail on the enemy for 5 turns unimpacted by the enemy, culminating in a super move that devastates the opponent. And it's pretty cool when you use the burst move. It cuts the music to like some music from whatever game the character who used the burst move has. So like if you use Sephiroth's burst, it plays One Wing Angel. If you use Cloud's Burst, it plays the boss fight music from 7. So those are your skill sets. And then every character has their own niche. They have their own abilities. They have reasons why you'd use them or not use them. And ZP, now, if you want to go into the analysis paralysis and the gacha mechanics, feel free.
Well, let's just talk about the analysis paralysis. Well, the first thing that I think we can kind of all, agree on is like, so you get this just giant suite of characters, and it kind of highlights the fact that the UI in this game is awful. You have like dozens of currencies, and then sometimes currencies upon currencies. Something like crystals, you need to have like 12 different types of each color of crystals. You've got tokens, and then tokens on top of tokens, and then like revive vials, and it's like just total analysis paralysis in this game. Like I had it to where I just booted the game up, had like I don't even know where to start because I'm dealing with all of these notifications about shit that I got because people used my characters on the online portion of the game, and then I got like messages here, and then I've got a notification about a new set of goals to achieve, and then an announcement for this new lost chapter sequence, and I got this new character that I haven't seen from yesterday, but suddenly I've got this new character in my squad. It's a busy game, it's an overwhelming game, and it just has so much going for it, and it does very little front-loading in terms of what to make of any of its shit sometimes.
Yeah, it's got easily 20 plus currencies.
No, I think it's over 20, because if you include the fact that there are, like the crystals, for example, there are 6 or 7 different colors, right?
There are 6 colors of crystals.
6 colors, and then 12 types of each color, or each crystal has 12 types, 12 or 10
Each crystal has 6 types.
So that's 36 alone for the crystal dynamic. And then we have 4 or 5 different types of tokens. We have money. We have
gems.
We have all of the boosts that are different items. Just too much. It's way too much. And when you stop and think about it, of these different currencies, half of them are actually relevant to you completing the game or playing the game.
Yeah, so I would say that of the currencies, If you are just trying to get through story mode and you don't care about anything else, almost none of them are relevant. The only ones you need to care about are crystals.
Yeah, that's fair.
If all you're trying to do is get through story mode, if you want to see the high-end content, all of them become relevant at some point. There are a couple that are only really relevant if you're trying to get the high-end stuff. Like, there's a currency that gets you special armor that lets your characters break the damage ceiling. That's not super relevant unless you're trying to do the high-end stuff. But to do that content, you can do it without that armor, but it's useful, like it's helpful. I would say I agree. Like, there are way too many currencies. So there's tokens for weapons, so you can unlock weapons that you want. There are currencies for armor. There's gems, so that you can roll for the gacha mechanic. There are tickets that let you roll for gacha items. There are weapons and armor for your characters that you need to juggle. There's the money, and you need to spend the money, the gil in this game, so that you can upgrade your weapons and armor. There are multiple different types of crafting materials that you need to use to upgrade a sword or a shield, and they're different for different types of weapons. There are different types of, like, I guess, EXP boosters you can feed your weapons or feed your characters, that each of those have different tiers. So it's just overwhelming you with information from the jump. The one thing I will say is that if you are trying to do high-end content, because they give you all of this stuff up front, you are actually capable of maxing out multiple characters without trying very hard.
It's actually kind of wild, because I guess this is a critique of this game. Like, I'm not familiar enough with this genre to know how normal this is, but I kind of get the sense it's normal. Because, like, so playing this game like what I would characterize as a cave person, normal human being, i.e. me, the experience yields are kind of low. So you start off with what apparently is like a really, really good character, I guess, or a handful of really good characters. And they will level up as you just kind of chud through story missions. The first thing you'll notice is that the yields get better on virtually everything if you play them. So there's a difficulty toggle that's surfaced like very, 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 very immediately in the UI. You set that thing on hard immediately because, oh my god, it's actually completely mindless on normal. Like, there's no resistance at all. It's just like, I don't know, punching through damp paper over and over again.
Yeah.
Once those yields start coming up, the experience is like, wow, this is taking forever. But just for installing that game, they give you, a handful of different currencies that you can just stack onto characters and literally get them up to the soft level cap, like, immediately, for what amounts to, like, 4, I think it's chocobo tail feathers or something.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, well, now I'm, like, overpowered, and now hard is too easy. I think that is... Well, I mean, I don't know. It just leads to this really weird balance thing where I feel like the only reason you would do that is you want to immediately start engaging with the rest of the shit, like the cool raid, dungeon, boss, unlock, extra, shiny, etc. things, which is where the money gets spent.
Potentially.
Yeah, because I don't know why else you would do that, because it makes the rest of the actual story content a cakewalk.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, like, you get that, you hit the soft level cap, and then you've got crystals. You need to feed characters crystals to softly level up abilities and their passives and stuff, and then break the soft level cap to get them to the hard level cap, and some of them have a level cap that increases over that once they're in an event, and the events need to get participated in, and you need currencies.
Yeah. I just got to the point where I felt like my brain was mush. It's like, I completed this mission and I got these 4 things. I don't know what any of this shit does. So you've given me this, like, little pellet after pecking my thing because I'm a bird in a Skinner box, but I don't know what the pellet does.
A, I'm not dumb, and B, I don't mind a whole lot of this, but just to quickly touch on this, the one thing I never figured out what the fuck to do with was, like, the weird emblem, ancient seal. Like, everyone got what amounted to, like, a really nice, like, platter with their face on it in a menu that I never figured out what the hell to do with.
Blooms?
So I just started ignoring them. Yeah, let's call them that. Sure.
The
Bloom?
artifacts?
Blooms and artifacts. Totally,
Okay.
total mysteries. I don't know how far ahead we're jumping here, but, like,
I mean,
they were the one thing I could not actively, like, oh, I figured this out on my own.
Em, want to explain what an artifact does?
yeah. I'll explain what that is, and then I want to talk a little bit about, like, how this compares to other of the genre, because
Sure.
that came up in the course of the conversation. The artifacts are basically like you're gaining abilities by leveling these artifacts up that you then can attach to your character. So if you were to level up like a cloud artifact, you would go into the level up menu and then you go 3 over, and then that's like entirely artifacts, and then you use artifacts to level up other artifacts. So if you really want like your cloud to be really good, you can shovel other artifacts into that, and then you'll get an ability out of it at the end that is randomly generated. If you have the free Moogle Pass, which everyone gets a free one to start, and then you can pay for other ones after that, but I don't think it's really necessary. It'll always be a red ability, which is the best of the best abilities, and then the only factor that you are kind of taking into consideration is what you need on that character and how expensive it is. Every character has their CP, which is how much points they can spend on all of their abilities across 5 different categories. Equipment, their boards, their artifacts, and some other stuff.
Equipment, and then artifacts are the last one.
Yeah. So basically you're trying to balance like what is the good ability and how cheap can I get it? And so you might dump a bunch of artifacts into one character, or you could spread it out and give everyone like a few good ones. You don't have to engage with this if you don't want to.
Yeah. It's the high end stuff. So like your artifacts, so in this game, all of your characters' abilities are tied to weapons, a la FF9 in some ways. Once you kind of master a weapon by limit breaking it 3 times and maxing out its EXP, so you can limit break a weapon by either using a currency that limit breaks or by getting a second copy of that weapon and feeding it to the first copy.
Yeah.
Once that weapon is maxed out, the ability that weapon would grant you becomes a passive. So you can just equip it to your character and not have that weapon equipped anymore. You can throw that weapon in the trash, basically. And you can sell it back for resources that let you limit break other weapons.
Yeah.
Artifacts work the same way. You feed other artifacts to an artifact. Once it maxes out, it gives you a passive. That passive sticks with your character permanently, and you can throw that artifact in the trash.
Yeah. I basically had a rotation where I would level up one artifact using like all the silver ones, which are kind of shittier than the gold ones. And then you just, when that one is leveled up, you then feed it to the next one, so it's cheaper.
Yep.
Selling it isn't really worth it. I think it only gives you gil, stuff like that.
Yeah, and equipping artifacts is not worth the damn. They're not good armor. They technically are armor. Never equip them. They're not good armor.
Yeah.
Okay, that's where I was. Yeah.
Yeah, so you're just supposed to level them up and throw them in the trash. But like the passives that those artifacts can give you can be really strong. Like they'll usually for every character have like a 10% damage buff on each of their normal abilities, an additional buff on one of their like passive buffs that they have. Like something might increase their attack and their HP, and this will make it go even higher. There's like HP buffs, there's defense buffs. So they're really useful, and you mostly get access to them through events. Like events will throw hundreds of them at you in a minute if you want. If you just do like the high level co-op stuff in an event and just turn on one of the like item triplers, which they give you for free like every couple of days.
Yeah.
If you turn those on, you can max out your artifacts in about 10 minutes.
Yeah, so that was what I wound up, like, at a certain point, I was like, all right, let's stack these crystals. So I just used most of those on the crystal events.
Yep, and the crystal events. So, like, if you wanted to level characters, story mode's actually a bad way to do it. They have a series of events that spit out money, spit out crystals, spit out experience. And if you just play those for 5 minutes, when you're watching TV, you'll generally max out a character from 0 or from 1 to whatever their level cap is very, very quickly.
So tell me if I'm wrong, though. So, like, to be clear, I did engage with the systems of this thing.
Sure.
But like,
this is obtuse. Like, you're completely right. Everything I'm explaining takes a lot of time to understand. It does not explain it very well in the game. Like, they try to do it via some text tutorials, but until you're put into the actual systems, you don't really understand what that text is. And going back to the tutorials to try and understand them again, like, this game was very much translated from Japanese, and sometimes it's not great at explaining.
Sure. I'm not even necessarily critiquing this, and I do want to hear Em's take on this, but real quick, like, the crystal feeding thing. So am I right in saying you could only do that 3 times before you had to back out of a menu, reselect a character, and then stack 3 more crystal chunks onto them, and then back it, like, because that's what I wound up doing. So,
Crystal
like,
level?
How do you mean? Which?
Like, Right, so they have like a level cap, and then there's like unlocking all of their like CP buffs and whatever, and like the level
I think I
cap
know
was
what Jeff's talking
tails,
about.
and then like the weird buff thing was feeding them crystals? Question mark? Yeah, it was crystals. It's crystal currency. So they start at like they have 2 fucking levels. So level 70 character with a level 1 crystal strength thing, whatever the hell you want to call it. I could get the UI for that is you could go 3 intervals and then no further, and then back out, and then another 3 intervals, and then back out, and then another 3, and then back out.
No.
Okay.
You can just click to the end.
Yeah.
How?
You can click to.
Yeah.
However,
you can just click
scroll
the
to
screen
the
and then
end.
it automatically takes you. Like I
Alright.
discovered this on accident when I
Because let me
bought
tell you, that
packages,
sucked
and it's
shit when I was doing it that way.
yeah.
That sounds
I
super
can imagine
annoying.
that
Like
I
I
don't know
felt
what
like
you
I was
do.
doing
but-
something wrong, but could not figure out what. So, all right, so I'm an idiot, and that's fine.
Now,
I can't
the one
put
thing
that
I
on.
will say though, like, but Jeff reminded me of this, and Gino, I feel like you danced around it. This still takes up a considerable amount of time, even if there is an efficient way for you to level a character from 1 to 60 or 70 or whatever the cap for that character is. It's not an amount of time that you should really scoff at. This is at least an hour sometimes.
no.
No. I understand. You can buff off and you can do that. It's still an amount of time that you are required to interact with these grinding mechanics, with this collection of crystals, and the fact that every character kind of requires that. I understand that it's a representation of the genre, but it's a time sink. It is a time sink, and it is intended to be a time sink to get you to modify your behavior in service of these mechanics.
You're not wrong. So, to max out a character, if you want to actually factually max them out, you need to get their level to level 70 or 80, depending on if they've been
Double
reworked
star
yet.
to triple star.
Some characters have a level 80 cap, some of them have 70. You need to get their crystal level to either 70 or 80, depending on what that character is. You need to max out all of their weapons. Characters can have up to, I think, some of the main characters, like Cloud, has like 7 or 8 weapons. A silver, like 5 different golds or more, and then he's got a burst weapon too. So you need to max out all of those. You need to max out all of their armor, which for most characters there's 2, and then there's a high level armor that you can't get without beating high level content. So that one you generally don't need to worry about. You need to get their bloom token, which is a item that once you max it out, it upgrades their free ability. So every character, once they get to like level 45, I think, gets a free use ability that doesn't eat up a turn. So bloom tokens are how you increase that. They usually increase the effect and also give you an extra use of that ability. You need to max out artifacts, at least 3, usually more, to get the abilities you actually want. There's also development boards that you can use, training boards, I think that's what they call them. Every character basically has a skill tree, 1 tree for their regular ability, another tree for their second regular ability, and then a third tree for their EX ability, and you can't really access that until you get their EX weapon. That takes experience points that only come off of events, so you can, and they're hard capped, they're level capped on a certain amount of experience per event. So that slows you down. You also need to max out their summon boards, because every summon in this game has a skill tree associated with them, and they have summon-specific experience. So it's basically 6,500 EXP per summon to max out their board. And once you've done all of those things, a character is maxed out.
So
Okay, and
I
you go first, Jeff.
this is where I actually hit a wall and stopped playing the game. And it's not because I suppose I was ultimately frustrated by all the menu fucking around that's necessary for this thing. But what it really came down to was like, okay, to really like increase from this point, what I need to do is get one of these summon level boards up, which means I need to engage with the summon events to get summon shit. And I got to a point where I could not progress on the Ifrit summon event because I needed to get him to level 11. To get him to level 11, I needed some kind of literally fucking toenail or something. Those toenails were not dropping. I could not get them to drop in his events. I could not get them to drop from any random events. They were dropping in story, and like when you clicked on it, it gave me like, oh, if you go to this chapter in this act, this is an act that will yield this thing. And I was not there yet in the story progression. So I was pretty much like capped in my like soft progress in the non-cool kid category of this game by a lack of toenails because the game would not feed them to me, which was the
also
point
hit
where I was
this
like,
wall.
okay, I am embarrassed by this state of affairs and I need to fucking uninstall this game.
Did you find the way around this wall?
Yeah.
Please tell me.
I mean, you basically figured it out, which is you need to do more of the Act 1 story.
Yeah.
Well, actually, the Ifrit event will also do it.
You could either grind the Ifrit event and it will eventually drop enough that you can level it to 11, or if you progress through the story, like every mission drops some of these summon upgrade materials. So you could just like, through the course of the story, through Act 1, eventually you will get enough stuff that you can unlock all of the 11 summon boards. And that was what I found out after I had completed grinding Ifrit for up to, I think, level 20, actually.
You
Because
need
I wanted
20
to do it advanced, the ultimate Ifrit, which is where you actually get like the stuff to upgrade past level 11.
Yeah.
So it's a little unscrutable because it doesn't explain this at any point, but it's one of those things where I guess it was added on later, and so they, like, if you were playing the story, you would have gotten all of these other things, and they were expecting that you would go through the story first and then try to deal with these extra things, but it's not conveyed anywhere. Like, they don't tell you, like, oh, play up until, you should probably wait until after Act 1 to deal with all this other stuff. It's not really necessary otherwise. But then you go into
granted, I was playing this in a weird coverage where it's like I just want to touch all of these things quickly, so not optimal mode of getting through the stuff. But
Sure.
yeah.
And I did something similar to Jeff, to where it's like, okay, here are the 3 characters from Final Fantasy that I actually like. I'm going to put them in a party. I'm going to pop off one of those phoenix feathers on all 3 of them. And then, you know what? Social experiment. I'm going to level them, because I found like a Reddit, a subreddit that had like the flow charts for all of the characters. This is how you get them to max level.
Yeah.
And I ended up following the flow charts for each of these 3 characters, and it took me about...
What 3?
Cloud, Squall, and Lightning.
Those are...
Good. They're pretty good.
Yeah.
They're good. They're not good on the same team, but they're all good.
I don't care. Those are the characters that I wanted in my party, because those are some characters that I actually like. And so I put those 3 characters on a team, and it's like, you know what, I'm not going to spend... So the only rule that I set for myself was I wasn't going to spend any money, but I was going to follow their flowcharts and get both. So Lightning was the one that capped out at 70. The rest of them, I believe, were 80s. Cloud was definitely a level 80, and he took the longest amount of time to...
Cloud and Lightning are 80s, Squall's a 70.
Yeah, okay, sure. I knew that there was 170, there were 2 80s. And so I would say the 80s... So Cloud's weird because, like, he's got multiple items that I could draw from, like, the random drawing things that I then could have given him a legendary weapon, but I hated that mechanic, but we'll talk about it later. But by following that flowchart, I just reached the point to where, okay, so I've reached this stage here up. I guess I got to go back to the story, progress it to chapter 2 in order to then get the next drop for this next step for this character. And just personally, I just got to the point to where, one, I didn't feel like the gameplay was rewarding enough to where I felt like I wanted to invest time into it. And that's not to knock those that do find a rewarding thing. There was a pretty good article that I read that was kind of like, in the era of mobile gamings and games as a service, it's getting really difficult. This was something on Polygon, I think. It's getting harder and harder for me to like remain invested in maybe more than 2 games in a given year. Because let's say that I already play Warframe. Let's say I already play Final Fantasy 14. I now got to drop another one game to put it into my schedule or my routine. And I just wasn't willing to do that with this game because I didn't find its mechanics rewarding enough. And I was probably the least enthused by its story, even though we'll talk about that part later. But so I followed it all the way through with 3 characters, and it just was kind of like what Jeff said. It's like you have to navigate in between menus a lot. You have to like This is like the weird thing that I have to pick up, but oh wait, this is the crystal that has the weird like crown thing on the bottom, so these crystals that I got from this mission aren't gonna work, and it was a level of minutia, and I felt so frustrated trying to figure this out on my own that I had to find a flowchart for these characters, and the flowchart was even ambiguous in certain steps to where it just never felt good. And I always felt like, sure, what you guys were talking about in terms of playing the game efficiently was right, but if you're playing it blind, there's an extra maybe 20 minutes of trying to just figure out if you're in the right places. You have to tack on even more time to each character.
Did you want to...
I was curious about this flowchart, because I was playing this blind. Would you be able to put that in the Discord at some point?
Sure.
So I could have a look? Because
Yeah, I did not mess with the flowchart.
yeah, I didn't. As I was getting towards more difficult content, I went and I found the website Tomberry Troop, and that has what all of the characters' abilities are in kind of this diagram, and then it tells you specific summon boards that they like for the case of, let's say, X-Death, he likes Odin and Bahamut, and tells you which options to pick there. So I don't know what the flowchart looks like, but I'm interested to see it sounds like it made it more difficult for you, honestly.
I'll just say this, even if it was more difficult, I just don't like playing this game.
I mean, it's not for everybody.
Sure.
No. So I ended up liking the gameplay because I found a surprising level of depth between the characters and the different team comps. There are basically a few different roles that you want your characters to fill. Straight DPS, who's going to be doing most of your damage. You generally want a quote-unquote brave battery, which is a character whose job is to keep your other character's brave number high, even when they're not attacking.
Yeah.
So they don't necessarily need to be doing a lot of damage themselves because they are just juicing up the other party members. There are buffers and debuffers that will pump up your characters or pump down your enemies. There are some characters with turn manipulation, so what they do is generally just set your opponents back or move your characters up so that you can get key attacks in at the right time. And those kind of cover... There's also healing. There are healers. But there's just enough variance between the characters and enough enemy variety in the high-level content where character and team comp really matters. If you're playing on normal or on hard and you're not playing the difficulty 180 or 200 content, it does not matter what you use or who's in your party. You're going to roll everything. If you get your party members to level 70 or 80 and get them a rare weapon, like one, and the game will give you free rolls in their gacha system, whenever a new event or new thing happens in their gacha store, they'll usually give you one free roll. And the free rolls are guaranteed to give you at least one rare piece of equipment. If you just hand that equipment to a character, max them on Crystal and EXP level, they will roll through story content. No thought necessary. There's even an auto battle system, and you can just turn on auto battle too if you want. It's only the high level content where you need to care about team comp. And once you do get to that point, I think that the depth reveals itself. And this is the problem that I think, Jeff, you already mentioned. If you're on level with what you're fighting against, this depth matters.
Yes.
If you become above level even a little bit on what you're fighting against, this game has no strategy to it at all. You invalidate all of the strategy. Like, the game scales from you dealing damage in the hundreds in the early turns to dealing hundreds of thousands of damage if you level all the way up. Like, the scaling is just so intense, you can very easily invalidate all of the difficulty. And once you do that, then you're left with only the high-end content holding any sort of interest in terms of gameplay. You basically sign up for that or you don't. The game will be boring and you're not going to enjoy it.
I respect and I hear what you're saying, but I feel like I said this in the Discord a couple of times. You just get to the point to where you start to feel comfortable with maybe 3, 4, at most 5 or 6 characters, and with each of those characters the attack that you're going to tap, and you see that same animation over and over again, and you end up narrowing in on the same batch of quests in the same location, so where you actually end up hurting and ruining kind of that diversity that you mentioned. Because with Cloud, with Squall, with Lightning, I ended up doing the same attack over and over again with each of them. I knew exactly what I wanted them to do, and I did the same thing over and over again, even on the higher level content, because if they could pop off this specific buff, then he's going to pop this off. It felt like a formula. And then also, I didn't get to experience as much of that visual variety that is actually in the game because of those balance issues that you mentioned. But also, I did feel like in order to get through some of this, I knew what I wanted, and I stuck with that, and the game rewards me for sticking with that.
Yeah, so, Em, maybe you and I had a similar play pattern. I played this game, all the content in the story mode, the story battles, anytime I was grinding, this was never the main thing I was doing. I was usually sitting on the couch watching TV with my partner.
Oh, yeah.
Then I would just have this going. I am not paying attention to any of what's going on in the low-level content. The only time I'm really engaged when I'm playing this game is in the high-level content.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Yep.
So I agree with you. Like, all of the low-level content is boring. The grinding stuff, not very appealing. If it is your second screen thing when you're watching something or doing something else, it is really low demand. It's not asking you to do very much. And in the realm of gacha games, this is easily the least exploitative one I've seen.
Yeah.
Like, we played Genshin Impact for the podcast, and this game makes Genshin Impact look like a scam.
Genshin Impact is a scam, but...
First off, Genshin Impact is a scam. Second,
this does make it look like incredibly egregious as far as its money-making practices.
You've played other gacha games. How does the gacha stack up? So in this game, the way that you buy rolls is through gemstones that you can get from just completing story missions or event missions. You get them once per completion of a mission. You can also get single rolls from the summon boards of characters when you unlock their summon boards. They'll give you 3 free rolls, 300 gems, and 5 armor tokens you can trade for armor. You can use those single rolls to roll in the gacha events.
Yeah.
So how does this stack up?
So as far as things go, I haven't reached the precipice of being done with the story even. I'm like 4 or 5 missions done in Act 2 and completed Act 1. So I still have a lot of content to go, and I've started to get to the point where it's kind of slowed down the gem generation, but I can still do like a lost chapter and get enough for 110 plus 1 roll, which is 5,000 gems.
Yeah.
So,
And the lost chapters are kind of standalone events for characters that give you a character and some of their armor and weapons.
yeah. So if I wanted to, I could just like burn through those and get all of these characters, all of their, starting out weapons and armor. As far as things go, like, I've gotten to the point where I kind of have my system. I will get a character to a knight, and then I would gem them up to 61, which gets them to the 70 cap and is like the minimum investment.
Yeah.
Because like after 61, you're getting into currencies that involve like events. Like you can only get them from certain bi-weekly things that kind of rotate out, and it's not really worth investing in like every single character. So you should definitely not spread yourself too wide, but I think it's worthwhile to like give them the one chocobo feather, get them to like where they're comfortable. And as far as things go, compared to like I play other things I'm not proud of, it's very much like you need to invest a lot of time, you need to invest a lot of recurring action in order to generate gems. And once you extend yourself beyond the limits of like what they give you to start, it starts to dry up. Like Genshin Impact, we're gonna use this as an example in like games classes in the future of like what not to do when you're making a game of this sort. You can log into Genshin Impact right now and it will be like you never left. You will also have received absolutely nothing from not logging in. And with games like this, it's often like they'll throw you a little, something here or there as far as the free stuff goes. Right now in Opera Omnia, it's actually their 3rd anniversary, I believe.
Yep. in the US at least.
Yeah, and so they have like a event going on right now that is giving you like a little bit of the upgrade materials for weapons, a couple gems each day, but it's going to accumulate as you keep checking in, which is what these games sort of rely on, is like the repeat, log in every single day. Yeah.
Every mobile game is entirely reliant on maybe 0.01% of its user base, the ones that are willing or even able to spend money on packages. A single player buying one outfit package for $39.99, which is I think what it was for this game, supports a user base
for one character.
Absolutely ridiculous.
That one purchase, the way that I've seen it presented, that one purchase supports like 10,000 possibly users of that community. So you only need like less than 1% of the user base to ever purchase or invest actual in-game money to support the community. And so that's fine. I understand the importance, and I'm glad that everyone here feels comfortable saying that you have a way that you've played this game and possibly are going to continue to play this game in a responsible manner. I will just say that these mechanisms, push notifications, there are emails sometimes that are sent. This game still engages in that addictive loot grind. It still utilizes those gacha game mechanics to keep the player from keeping on playing it, to continue to make it a part of their daily functions, to make it kind of this normalized part of your routine. If you feel like that you're able to do that without, eventually shelling out money, great, but I do feel like it's still guilty of engaging in those unsavory behaviors. If you put it the way that I heard it said, if you find a slot machine that allows you to put in a nickel and it spins the numbers and it does all the things, and even if you lose, it spits the nickel back out, it's still asking you to put that nickel back in it, even if you get your nickel back, right? So it's still trying to modify your behavior to be more comfortable into using it. And that's kind of where I ended up just saying, I don't want to play this game. It's great that people have it and play it and enjoy it, but I can't help but see these mechanics. I can't help but see these systems, and I can't help but see this and view it as an extension of gambling, an extension of possible exploitation of human behavior, conditioning of human behavior, and I can't separate that. And I know that we have a couple of people who comment. I know if you go to the podcast from Mobius, you'll find that I would not make this statement if that me were on this podcast right now. And I would just say that I have changed my personal feelings about this entire genre and how it works as a result of recent events.
That's fine. Yeah, so a lot of what's going on with the gacha mechanic, and something that stands out to me is the value on things that they sell you are terrible.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we can agree with that, is like, you should not buy anything in this game. Everything that it sells.
Nothing worthwhile.
$70 will get you access to 3 rolls. If you do 3.5 rolls,
missions, you get those 3 rolls.
If you do like 20 missions, which if your characters are souped up, you can just turn on auto battle and like run through those missions like Drano. You can get enough. I think it's 20 missions for a roll. But you, like I said, you run through those 20 missions in like 10 minutes. You can burn through that really fast if you're just going through regular content. So there is no reason to spend money on this game unless you absolutely positively tap out on the story content. And even then, just don't. Please don't.
Where I think my point is that I do feel like we still have these ethical questions about the role of game design in keeping players addicted or keeping players invested. But also, I feel like it is important to recognize time is, in fact, a form of a valuable currency, I would just say.
Yes.
And that that currency, you still have to put into this game no matter what.
So the other thing that this game does is that you can only actually roll through the gacha mechanic on like 3 to 5 events at a time, and those events cycle out bi-weekly.
Yeah.
So if there's not a character that you care about in those roles, or you don't care about the equipment, you can just skip it. And it's not like there's like a Genshin Impact style bucket that will give you everything, and you're just rolling against everything every time you roll. They limit it to 4 or 5 featured characters per roll, and if you don't see any of the characters that you want in those rolls, you will never get the items you want. So there is no reason to spend on that. If you roll, I believe it's 15 times on a single roll, which is, again, that's possible to do just with the free gems that the game will give you through the story missions, you are able to purchase one of the exclusive weapons that's being given out in the event. If you're looking for a specific burst weapon, which is like the highest tier of weapon, if you roll 25 times on a given event, you can just buy that item. So you are not actually completely beholden to the random number generator to get the things that you want, which, man, if other gacha games did that, I would feel less bad about it. You can still obviously get stuck.
I think it's worth mentioning the weapon system, actually, as one of the most nefarious, I think, things in this game, because you have access to pretty much any Final Fantasy character you can think of, save a few. Quina was mine that I wanted to play.
Yeah, hell yeah. I wish Quina was in this.
Yeah. The distinction between a character that is, like, worthy of playing and, like, a character who you are enjoying playing is, like, the weapons that you get. So Cloud was my go-to because there was a Cloud event going on right off the bat, and you could get, like, as many Cloud items as you want by spinning the thing. But if you didn't get, like, one of the core items out of that roll, you were basically, like, screwed. So if you're going to be using these characters for high tier play, you want to get every item that they have access to and then fully limit breaking them, which takes 4 copies of each weapon besides a BT weapon, which doesn't get upgraded. So in order to actually, like, make a character quote unquote good, you would probably have to spin their thing at least 10, 15 times. So you had the option of, like, choosing the weapon that you want. And then you could spend power-up gems if you wanted to. But those are, once again, like, a limited resource, and I don't know how you get more of them besides spending a different currency.
I think that there was a way for you to get... Because I ended up using Dissidia tokens to do the easy way of just using the, like, lantern thing to get limit breaks onto items.
Right.
There are power tokens. You can use 4 of them to limit break any generic item.
But you only get
and you can
one
sell...
level, Gino. For 4.
Yes, 1 for 4. But you can sell, once you've limit breaked a weapon and you've gotten its passive, you can sell it for 4 tokens. And any rare weapon that you pick up can be sold for 1 token. So if you're just rolling on the same event, you know, you're trying to get one specific thing, every rare item that you pull from there can be turned into limit breaks so that whenever you get the item you care about, you don't need to roll anymore. You can just spend those additional power tokens that you've stored up.
Yeah. I had a system which was basically, for the characters, I get them to 61 crystal, I get them to level 31, I would then grind the experience generating cycle quests, they're called.
Yep.
And then for the weapons, I would see what I could get from whatever rolls I had available, and then when I would get a Limit Break 2 weapon, I would then use some tokens to upgrade it to 3, fully upgrade it, and then sell it to get those tokens right back. So it became like a cycle of, like, oh, whatever characters I can do this with, that's going to be what I'm going to be playing in the future. Like Furion right now is having an event, and he's almost, like, up there. So, like, I did this with Cloud, I did this with Zonde. One of the reasons why I couldn't play Sephiroth is because I didn't get any of his weapons. I got, like, his best weapon, but I don't have any of the support for that. So he kind of, like, was in this weird middle ground. And so the weapons are, like, the real deciding factor, it seems.
Yeah.
So if you can't get the EX weapon or the LD weapon or the burst weapon from an event pull, they are prohibitive to get via other currencies. LDs right now have no way to get them outside of draws, and the LDs for some of these characters are what makes the character work properly. Usually they'll have some sort of mechanic that you care about, and the LD will usually just, like, turn on everything that you care about. So, like, the Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles guy, Ciaran, he has a little crystal chalice that every time he attacks, it fills up a little bit, and then once it's full, he gets pumped up. And he pumps up your entire team. Normally that requires 5 turns of pumping him up. If you get his LD weapon and just use his LD attack once, it sets him to 5, and it stays that way for like 8 turns. So, like, the little quest that the character is supposed to go on to activate its maximum power just gets short-circuited entirely by the LD ability. And so that's the way that you have to use the character. So if you don't get those things from pulls, your character's just not going to be capable. Like, not maximum capable for high-level content. So, like, I didn't get Lightning's LD because I wasn't playing at the time when Lightning's LD was available. So I'm just missing a key ability for Lightning. So even though Lightning's a very powerful character, I just don't have the kit to make her useful. Whereas my Cloud, since I have everything for Cloud, he's a monster. He beats everything. I can beat almost any high-level content.
Yeah, I don't even have... did not get his best stuff, but finishing touch was attached to one of the weapons I got, and that was enough to... Pretty much anything above level 90 was kind of brainless at a certain point.
And
Blade Beam,
there were just times
Blade
where...
Beam's fucked up.
Go ahead, Gino.
No, Blade Beam's fucked up. It hits every enemy, and it delays them for 2 turns.
Literally, I've hit Blade Beam probably 10,000 times. Cloud is super fast. You could just punch that, and that's what gets me through my crystal farming.
The best this game kind of felt for me was when I did a couple draws. It's because it's like, how about I just buy a bunch of draws and see what happens? I ended up like maxing out the limit breaks for Beatrice, and just being able to shock everything to death was great. And it allowed me to later be able to get into the higher level content that Em and Gino were talking about. But I also just got a shit ton of those wands for vanilla, and I just ended up putting them together. There is one thing about this game mechanically that I fucking loved, and I would like to see this actually happen in the main franchise. Debuffing and buffing does damage to the opponent, and I would like for that to apply to the main franchise, because how many times was it where it's like, I guess I'll just slog through this, maintain my DPS perspective, but then, here vanilla is like doing Dispel, and it's like, shit, that just killed the enemy because it actually does damage on top of its normal command, and it's like, that's pretty cool. I'd like to see that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's amazing how many of these characters feel something like the character in their original game. Like, Lightning, her whole thing is swapping back and forth between Commando and Ravager, and when you swap back and forth, she gets extra turns. Vanille is a debuffer. Zell gets, like, if you use one of his special moves, he goes into dual mode, and when he's in dual mode, his regular attacks get buffed up, and his special moves change from, like, the move that he does when he's doing the Apoca Fist, like, damage loop, to one of his finishers. They managed to make these characters actually feel distinct. For 100+ characters, it's hard to do that.
Sure. Yeah. And I think this leads us to the last thing that we can kind of talk about.
Mechanically. We need to talk about the story.
Yeah, we have to talk about the story, which is, so the characters are designed in this way that I feel like plays into the strength of this game being this fan service delivery system. And the story also is that. I would say that the thing that we have excoriated previous Final Fantasy games is that they sometimes lay heavy on the fan service and like paying homage to the past. And like I have said, if that is a problem that you have with some of the modern entries of this franchise, this story does absolutely nothing for you. Especially for me, as someone who has not even played like all of these games, it's like, I don't know who the fuck you are. Whatever. Your entire chapter is basically dead to me. It's like, sure.
Yeah.
Who's Stance Red? I guess you're a dipshit, I guess. But if you have an appreciation for more than 6 or 7 Final Fantasy games, boy, I think you would get a lot out of this game's story.
I will say, I played like other crossover games, particularly like the Tales game, I forget what it's called, which was like, oh, here's all these other Tales of whatever characters.
Oh, Cross Zone? Project Cross Zone?
Yes.
Hell yeah.
Oh, I fucking love Project Cross Zone.
No, I couldn't do it.
That game is so fucking stupid. It's like, let's have Beautiful Joe next to the fucking Hyperdimension Mitunia characters. It's like, fuck yeah!
I really like Tales of Symphonia. I don't know who the fuck any of these other people are.
What if the character from Tales of Symphonia were next to Pac-Man?
That would be pretty sick.
That's what happens in Project X Zone
baby.
Part 2.
I actually have that on my shelf right now. I could probably pick that up. The point is, as far as a collection game goes, like collecting different characters, not in like a Pokemon, but I guess also a Pokemon sense, it makes it so that the stories of the characters are really quite clear. Some of them are even spoilers, honestly.
Yes.
But there's a lot of like Final Fantasy VI which I have never played, it actually did so much work with the Final Fantasy VI characters that I went and I started to play Final Fantasy VI. So I had no idea who any of these characters were, but because they had such good writing, I was just like, I could probably play this for a while. And it never grabbed me before, and I don't know why it has now. I guess it's a testament to, like, they did the work for this one that other big, I don't think even Smash does this to this level.
No.
Like,
not even at all.
Like, not the current Smash. It doesn't do anything. But the one before that had, like, a story mode that was kind of like...
Spaceship Emissary.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of like, oh, look, Pikachu's hanging out with Samus, where it's kind of like, I guess that's cute, but they're not really, like, talking or anything. I think it was specifically no one talked in that, but that's beside the point. But it didn't make me want to be like, oh, I like Pokemon. Maybe I'll like Metroid any more than I do already. But this game doesn't.
Yeah, so I think that what Act 1 of the story is largely just collecting characters. The setup is this world, Opera Omnia, is kind of a secondary universe to the larger Dissidia universe, which is the fighting game universe. When the characters that are in the fighting game are not fighting, they are supposed to be in this world of respite. It's basically a world that was created by Materia and Spiritus, who are the two, like, gods of the Dissidia universe.
This story is the exact story from Mobius.
Well, Materia and Spiritus have created this world to kind of give the Final Fantasy folks places to hang out and just chill and just be normal. But they fucked up. Instead, Materia brought in the good guys, Spiritus brought in the bad guys. Materia was like, okay, good guys, this world's kind of falling apart. Could you do me a solid and try and stop it from falling apart? And Spiritus brings in his people and is like, hey, this is your world, do whatever the hell you want, enjoy. So the bad guys are just running amok because they're bad guys, and the good guys are trying to stop them. And you're trying to close these things called torsions, which are just like big portals that spit out monsters. So that's basically the plot of Act 1. You're running around shutting these gaping holes in the universe, running into the villains from respective FF games, and they usually do some mustache-twirling stuff that is reminiscent of what they did in their original games. It's almost all just kind of callbacks in Act 1. But they do some good work of just like, hey, there are some through lines of these games, so what if we had the characters who appreciate these through lines go into dialogue with one another? So, like, Vivi from FF9 talks to Rem from FF Type 0, and she apparently has a terminal illness of some kind. So her, Vivi, I think Titus is there too, and some of those characters who die in their respective games just all have a talk about, hey, what do we do with the fact that, death is coming? How do we handle this? There's a dad moment where all of the old men of the Final Fantasy universe hang out. So you get Yang from FF4, Laguna from FF8, Jecht from 10, Galoof from 5, and they all just hang out and talk about being old together. And, like, those moments are kind of fun. Towards the end of Act 1, the Moogle that guides you around, it turns out it's possessed by an evil creature.
Dragon monster thing?
Yeah. And it's been making you fight all the villains so that it can steal the energy generated by your combat.
But then don't they retcon
to destroy
this
the
and
world?
give you back the Moogle after this story? It's...
Yeah.
So
They retconned it. I'm not crazy in saying they retconned it. They give you back the Moogle.
They don't retcon it. He's possessed. You knock the demon. You exorcise the demon from him. And once you do that,
Fuck
he
that.
goes
That
back
Moogle
to being normal.
betrayed you. Throw him in the trash. That Moogle is trash.
I was always suspicious of that fucking move.
Yeah, you can see that part of the story happening a mile away.
Well, yeah, every character's like, I don't trust that Moogle. Like, there's an entire subgroup of good guys who create the returners from FF6.
What's this Moogle, and why does he know everything important to the plot?
And why won't he tell us? And he's playing both sides. The Moogle's talking to Spiritus, he's talking to Materia.
This is fine.
The first time he did that, I was like, what the fuck are you doing over here, you little shit?
And I
I'm
like
gonna
how the
kick your
Moogle
ass.
comes back and they're all like, I guess you're fine. Welcome to our party again. I guess you're going to drop the whole part about you kind of betrayed us and threw us into a bad way, but welcome back.
Well, they were like, you were possessed by a demon. We get it. Some of
We've
us
all
have been
been
possessed
there.
by
Maybe
demons.
this is maybe going to be a best plot twist, but not really nominee later. I would say I kind of like the story. I think that it is very fan servicey heavy, and
Well,
a lot of the characters, even though you do get their character quirks within the game, it does bank a lot on your ability to even know who these characters are, their events within the stories that they come from.
yeah, you need to do the required reading.
And then on top of that, this game stretches, each of the chapters stretches this continuum, these character moments on a very predictable, if not pedantic continuum. It's like, oh, here are the 3 characters that are going to be a part of the next chunk of the story. Introduce them, 3 or 4 combat missions, cutscene in which they find the topic of their conversation, smash cut, right as you're going to notice they're funning about, 3 or 4 combat missions with the same enemies again. Here's the next part of that cutscene in which, the dads talk about being dads and needing to, do the responsible thing of keeping your kids away from combat. It's like, I feel like it really does stretch a lot of this, and I get it. I played Mobius. I hear you. I even played a little bit of Brave Exodus as a comparison to this. I hear you in saying that at least you don't need to put in money to see the next part of the story, and it's not that bad because you can just slosh through the story. But it's the stretching part of the story.
I would agree if Act 2 didn't
Act
exist.
2 changes everything.
I actually,
Yeah.
and I guess this is the thing, I finished Act 2. I hear you. I didn't like it.
Really?
I did not like Act 2.
Any of it? None of it?
So I loved Act 2.
Okay. Well, go ahead and summarize
So-
it, and I'll kind of share my
So
comment.
yeah, Act 1 is just like, the Moogle's gonna betray you. Like, that's what's going on in Act 1. The bad guys are showing up doing their thing from whatever game they came from, and then they leave. Act 2, the world falls apart after Act 1, and you need to go to this other world, the world of darkness, that just has a bunch of MacGuffins you need to get, right?
And that is the exact point that I was going to say, is like, as interesting as it is, you are doing the same exact mechanics and grind.
Well, yeah, the mechanics don't change. They're not going to
and then
change.
that's
the
my
game.
problem, is that it presents this
Well, yeah,
huge shift in tone, and it would have been interesting if it was something different, because say in Mobius, you actually needed to solve puzzles in order to now move on. There were in-game tapping puzzles here and there. I just, this is when it was yeah, I'm glad I figured out how to integrate myself into these mechanics and these subsystems, because boy, if I had to even play these games with half the attention that they seem to want to require out of me, I would not be digging this right about now.
Well, yeah, so Act 2 focuses on, turns out, in the world of Dissidia, all the characters who are dead in their main game know that they're dead, and they are not dealing with it well in some cases. Every chapter in Act 2 follows a different character who is dead in their main story, kind of trying to assert themselves onto the world in some way, because they're alive in this world and it's all they have. So chapter 1 is Caius from FF13, and he tries to use, so I guess Type 0, in Type 0, if someone dies, they just cease to exist in the memory of all of the people who knew them.
Correct.
And so Caius thinks that the way to fix what he did in the 13 universe is to take the rules of Type 0 and cross it over onto the world of 13, so that when Yule keeps dying over and over again in 13, he won't be sad about it, so he won't destroy the world. Which is interesting, right? That's an interesting use of crossover.
You go from one harebrained plot to the next in terms of, how do we fix the problem? I'm going to introduce myself. Here's what part of the other Final Fantasy games I want to apply to see if it fixes. Oh, it doesn't fix. We have to beat this evil thing.
I mean, I don't know if you're not going to take the individual stories of the characters and care about what they say, then yeah, it's all the same MacGuffin. That's what these games are in a lot of cases, is just stories from plot point to plot point with some interpersonal relationships, but they're mostly just getting MacGuffins to beat evil sorcerers. And that's why all of the villains are evil sorcerers. But I found the 9 section, which is Act 3, where Kuja summons the Ifa tree and the ice cavern by accident. He tries to assert assert his independence in this new world. And instead of actually summoning some new construct that he wanted, he just summons the place where he ended up dying. And he just can't deal with it.
Sure.
Like, General Leo from FF6 shows up in a chapter, and he's just like kind of a side boss in 6. And when he shows up, he's dedicated to the Empire in 6, but the Empire is evil, so he doesn't fully appreciate how evil they are, and he dies before they have their final heel turn.
Sure.
So when he shows up in the world of Opera Omnia, he's this man who knows that the path that he walked down led to the ruination of the world. The people he was fighting for were evil. The country that he was trying to defend, he did not defend. And now he's thrown back to life in this world and has to deal with all of that. Like, knowing that he was a fairly honorable person fighting for a terrible cause and has no place to go
That's
back
fine,
to.
But here's the other thing that I would say in terms of, like, what broke this entire story is when the game picks a game that I don't care about or did not like, I don't give a fuck about Type 0. I don't give a fuck about Type 0. And it spends so much time. Once it spends a lot of time on characters that I don't care for in the general Final Fantasy franchise, I can't feel invested with this part of the story.
Can you appreciate compelling storytelling?
I can appreciate what they do. Look, I can appreciate what they do to string these characters on their adventure. Absolutely. And I do think that it is worth commending that they put a lot of writing, really good writing. My favorite character in this game by far was Shantoto, because they really nailed the fact that she speaks in rhyme. And there was this weird part where Shantoto's flirting with Kuja, and it was the best. And it's when I have these characters that I play off each other, that meant a lot to me. But when it's these characters where I personally have never felt any investment with them, and now the game has decided I want to spend 20 minutes with these characters, it's geez, fine.
So yeah, I'd like to, I guess,
Go ahead,
jump
Jeff.
to the defense of this thing, I guess. Yeah, so there's an A plot, and you'll feel a way about it, and yeah, it will force you down some rabbit holes of I think Final Fantasy VI might be the best game in the whole series, and I was like, wow, we're gonna really go in on General Leo, huh? This one? Okay.
Yeah, he's a character who has not very much in 6.
Okay, that's a choice.
But they make him, I care about him now in a weird way.
But I could see someone not giving one shit because they started on, of all things, 15 and they don't care. It's that's cool. You can just ignore, this plot can just be happily ignored because there's so much other shit to potentially do in this game that if you want to just spend the time going through and seeing little vignettes of I'm going to unlock Beatrix and go down her little adventure story because there's written dialogue in there, you can just kind of walk around the quote-unquote A plot, which would maybe not be the best defense, but I guess this is sort of dismissive, but my real point is it exists, and there's so fucking much of it. I actually did not play Act 2 at all. I never got around to it because I wanted to just, get from A to B, and at a certain point it's just I'm done. I get it. I think I get this. I think I understand what it is. I don't know how many more times I want to hit finishing touch in my wild and precious life. But I also didn't expect there to be literally thousands of lines of dialogue written by people who had some knowledge of all of these games. The amount of actual care that went into the writing part of this game compared to what I expected it to be, which was literally a meme pick piece of shit mobile game designed to get its hand into your pocket and take all the money out of it as quickly as possible, is staggering. It's shocking. I don't even really give a shit about the specifics, which that's just a me thing, but it's there. They tried. They put effort into it at all.
And I'm not denying that. I'm definitely not denying that. And if these characters and what they've done here, if that mattered to you and it connected with you, I don't want to diminish that. I would say personally with me, when I reached characters and I realized, well, fuck, this cast I have to spend 10 minutes with, I'm kind of not digging you. I kind of don't want to invest the time with you. I'm just going to speed through this, but that's still going to be I'm saying that I mean to suggest that the world is going to hell in a handbasket. We have a limited amount of time left on this planet, and dealing with certain characters, say a la Type 0, a la any of the Final Fantasy 3 characters, fucking Furion and his trash ass.
You don't have to deal with the
The
three
fucking-
characters hardly at all.
turban weird thing and like his weird orange dyed skin. Fuck him. Fuck
I
that
got a tan.
I just can't
Zand
get as
guy
bothered
and
by
his
this 'cause it's
fucking
just-
like gemstone looking eyes with his
At
giant.
best, it's like
So-
competent writing from someone who cared, and at worst, you can literally hit skip on all of it and never see it and get to the actual, I guess, rewarding part of this game, which is the numbers get bigger, and it's fun to make numbers get bigger sometimes.
So, Jeff, I mean, for me, I did not care about the Type 0 characters at all until
Yeah.
I got to the Type
Yes.
0 section, and now I want to play Type 0.
Exactly. That's what
Yeah,
like-
there's a non-zero number of actual games, that's kind of dismissive, but actual Final Fantasy games that have probably been sold on the back of this thing, which is a net positive, probably.
Sure.
And is
Sure.
wild.
It's wild to me that, so Act 1 was all just, hey, look at these people, they have something in common, look at them
Yeah,
hang
it's
out.
literally like, oh, you like an airship? I like an airship. Isn't it crazy? Oh, you're a sex pest? I'm a woman. That's crazy. Like,
Yes,
fucking-
or all the different Sex
Fucking
Pest characters all
Zidane
hang
and
out
asshole.
hitting on the same people. Just Edgar and Zidane and I forget who there's another
My game
one
has a
who's
sex
just like an
pest
asshole
in
like
it.
that.
I'll acknowledge
sometimes.
it. It's okay.
Yeah, Edge.
I just, and then also like it's fun when it's fan servicey stuff, but like the scaffolding for all of this is a bunch of techno babble that I could not be fucked to care about.
So
That whole dimensional shit and the portal stuff, whatever. The character moments in this game, good
How-
to maybe decent, but like the
How
actual
else would
scaffolding
you
for
do
it.
it?
I mean,
what would
that's
you
a great
prefer?
point. Like, you can only have a crossover. You can only have a crossover event like this if you yada yada like the scaffolding.
You
for
got
it.
to hand wave some of it.
Yeah,
Like,
absolutely. I'm not denying that.
go-
I'm just
go, go,
saying
go.
that the consequence of that is that you got to kind of like turn your brain off, and you have to accept it as the same way you would accept one of like those Marvel Avenger movies.
I've got to say,
I will take
I'm sorry, Gino, we're going to let you talk, but off the back of this, I installed that goddamn Dissidia NT trial on
Oh,
Steam,
fuck.
which does not have like a lot of the story in the free client version of that game, but you can find all of it on youtube.com. And this game does a better job of like handling its universe and introducing you to it than a premium game does.
Like Caius in this game is better than Caius in 13-2.
by a lot.
Yeah.
By a lot. He is so much more interesting in this game. And that's what so first off, in terms of the scaffolding shit, I will take yada yada with like two little caveats over fucking how Kingdom Hearts does it, how most other
Okay,
crossover
that's
games
not
do it.
fair. Comparing this game, comparing any Final Fantasy game to Kingdom Hearts, like, congratulations, you lowered the bar so low that even a fucking slug can go over it.
I will take a game that yada yada's the reason why everything's fucked up over a game that just spends excruciating fucking detail explaining why every
Star
character
Trek
is
Enterprise is it to death. Just, yeah.
hanging out with each other. So yes, I will definitely take this. Thank goodness. Like the other major crossover that Square Enix made is such a shit show compared to this. 2, what I really appreciated in Act 2 was that they took a bunch of characters whose storylines ended and made them extend in interesting ways. Like Leo getting a second act in this game is really cool. Getting Kuja to have some cool moments. Ace, like, I guess some bad stuff happens to Type 0 in Type 0. Like, Class 0 seems to not
Everyone
come out of that
dies.
okay.
Everyone
Seems to die.
Everyone dies.
I mean, with the possible exception of 13-2, Square has been, let's say, famously bad at revisiting its Final Fantasy properties. 10-2, definite step down from 10. For the after years, bad. It took
Like, insultingly
Team
bad.
Ninja
Don't even...
to do a good job at that. It took
Yeah.
Koei Tecmo to be like, how's this? Like,
But, like, the section where Ace in Type 0, like, he's a villain in one of the acts because someone tells him, hey, you're gonna die. You're gonna die before the end. You're dead. You're dead. This is the last world for you. There's no way that you're going to be able to leave this world. So, given that you can't leave this world, what are you going to do about it? There's nowhere else but here. And so he recreates the world of Type 0 so that he can have a place that looked like where he used to live. And he starts living with, like, these abstract mannequins that look like some of his friends. And he just starts talking to these, like, they're empty husks that look like his friends. And he's spending time with them because he's got nowhere else to go. And then one of the characters from Type Zero who's in this story, I guess, betrays all of them and leads a bunch of them to getting killed. And then, because Type Zero ends with them dead, he never has to confront them with what his what happened.
I am happy that it meant that much to you. I will just say that I'm happy that it meant that much to you, but...
it's really cool that, like, this dude who betrayed them, and now he has to, like, these people he thought he'd never see again, he now has to see face to face. Those characters who all sacrifice themselves thinking, okay, the way our world works is if we die, no one remembers us or remembers what we did. And then he's like, nah, actually, after you died, everyone remembers you. You, like, changed the rules of the universe, and you guys made a huge impact on the world. Getting to have these moments with characters who never got to live this, to see the results of their actions. Crossover games don't generally do this. They don't try to advance. They try to play as hands-off on the story, or they go completely sideways, like Pac-Man talking to, main characters sort of stuff. This game actually tries to be respectful of the games that these characters came from and further their stories. I've never seen a crossover game try this and be successful.
Game? Sure. Okay.
So I think it's ranking time.
Boy, this is going to be rough.
Yeah, so Opera Omnia, let's go over our current rankings and then we can get to it. So top of the list is FF9, followed by FF10, then 7, then 8, then 5, then 12, then the trading card game, then 1, then Legend of the Crystals, 10-2. Is 13-2 before 10-2?
Ah, fuck.
No, it's below 10-2.
Let me find the pin. M pinned it. So it's 9, 10, 7, 8, 5, 12, TCG, 1, 5, Legend of the Crystals, 10-2, Advent Children. Spirits Within,
no, 13-2.
Mobius, Last Order, 10-2, Last Mission, 2, 11, 13.
13-2 is below 10-2 and above Advent Children.
Yes.
Okay, so 13 permanent lowest. So let's start, I think, from the bottom
It's
here.
always the easiest with the bottom unless everyone feels like we've played one of the best in the franchise.
And I don't think we have. So Opera Omnia, I think it's better than 13.
Sure.
Yeah.
I think it's better than 11
Yes.
by a lot. Better than 2.
Yes.
Better than 10-2 Last Mission.
Yes.
Better than Last Order.
Correct.
Better than Mobius.
Rest in peace. Yes.
Better than Spirits Within.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Better than Advent Children.
I'm going to say no.
I disagree.
Jeff? I'm not going to fight it if I'm not going to fight this, but Jeff. I would just say that Advent Children is a fan service delivery system across a continuum of an hour and a half and this game is thing that wants to absorb as much of your time as humanly possible.
Yeah, I don't know, dude. I think I just enjoy Advent Children more than this game, and they're both ephemeral enough that I kind of don't give a shit. You could put it above Advent Children, I guess, but
all right.
I think it's better than 13-2.
That's a real gross. I don't want either of these games to win that. I choose death.
I found, like I said, I found that section with Ace and the Type Zero crew. I think some of the bits that they do in this game infinitely more charming than anything in 13-2. Other than the gotcha mechanic, nothing offended me like Chocolina.
We need to decide if it's above or below Advent Children first before we have the 13-2 debate.
I vote higher.
I vote lower.
I realize Em's not here and can't weigh on this right now.
Em would probably vote for higher, definitely.
So I think Advent Children is a totally fine fan service movie. I think that everything they do to add on to that beyond the fan service part, they fail spectacularly.
Geosigma's pretty fucking stupid.
Do you remember the kid?
Yeah.
I forget his name. Dwayne?
No.
The two kids in the
Derek?
Yeah.
Nope.
Okay,
so we'll go above Advent Children.
And you watched the 3-hour movie or whatever.
We watched the 2
extended
hour and
cut.
45-minute version.
Yeah, that's
a lot of Advent.
You can play so much Opera Omnia while you're trying to watch Advent Children.
All right,
13-2.
Is this better than 13-2?
I think it is. I think that this version of Caius, they do more with him in 2 cutscenes.
Pick one character to try and argue that it is better than 13-2. I will say
that's where I'm starting.
Value
that's where I'm starting.
Self-contained single player, the scope of a single player experience over a mobile gacha game. That is my personal opinion.
But
It
it
goes to Jeff
basically
again.
is. That's what it is, though.
Yeah, I
It's
know.
just-
But that's what
I'm
13.2
saying
is.
that I have, like I said at the beginning, I have moral and personal objections to this as a genre and the way that this game works.
I mean, 13.2 it's a Pokemon thing where like random drops are that's what
But
you're
I didn't
trying
get
to grind for.
notifications
And
to
then,
go back to it and to check out this new event.
I mean, you can turn off notifications.
I hear you. I totally respect what you're saying. I'm saying
13.2 has a slot machine in it.
I
It has slot
I
machines.
spent more money on 13.2 than I did on Opera Omnia, and that's
well,
not even.
then,
I bought
then
the
at
disc.
that point,
I bought the
then
DLC.
Opera
for it.
Omnia is the best Final Fantasy game we've ever played.
That's not true. Well, it's definitely worse than some of these other ones, but I'm saying I think I enjoyed my time with Opera Omnia more than I enjoyed my time with 13.2.
Just to make this easier, I think I'll concede the floor and say that it's better than 13.2.
Well, Jeff, what do you think?
This is a dog. Okay, because yeah, we're at my soft cap, so yeah, okay, fine. 13.2 is a flawed game.
Now we're up to 10.2.
Yeah, it's done. It's not.
I'm
going
done.
to 10.2.
I will put my foot down and say this is my line. I am not going to say that this game is better than 10.2.
What if it was better than 10.2 but worse than Legend of the Crystals?
It's
I-
worse than both.
Would say
You're
it's
right.
worse than both.
That's a true statement.
I don't know.
I think that again.
I need to rewrite this.
I think that while I find maybe you know what I'm willing to concede some of the things that you said about the emotional resonance. It is still one of those games. Like it's still one of those games to where it demands a modification of your personal behavior in order to play it. It requires it engages in addictive mechanics that can ruin your fucking life.
It's true.
I won't even go that far. I'll just say in terms of actually like the part where you play the game, I find the 10 combat to be more engaging than
Yeah.
this thing.
Yeah, the 10.2 combat's good.
Yeah, because it's just
the good part
10
of that game.
combat. So like the part where I play the game, I just enjoy that more, and everything else is subjective or specific niche soapbox issues, which count. But we're talking about games you play. I think that I played 10.2 before this, and 10.2 is not even great, to be clear.
No.
But it's pretty okay. It's just more okay than this.
No. LeBlanc is in 10.2, and so's Vegnagun.
Yeah, by rights, LeBlanc's probably in this game, so
She isn't.
she will be.
What the fuck? Ah,
Point-
okay. Yeah, sure.
They keep
fine,
laying
whatever.
down railroad
Is
tracks.
Barreleye in this game?
No. They kept Shuyin. Pain is the only 10.2. They didn't even put Riku in this game
That's
yet.
amazing.
That's amazing. I guess they wouldn't know which character model of Riku. Wouldn't it be great if you had two versions of Riku? One fully clothed, the second one bikini girl. They probably would go with bikini girl.
The at rhythm gets into some of that. Fun fact.
Once you get to...
That's right.
Once they add Riku, I'm sure that they will gladly charge you $40 for Bikini Girl Riku. Okay, I mean, I think 10.2, this is the fight. This is where... Is it below 5 crystals? Because I like Legend of the Crystals more than Opera Omnia, I think.
Okay,
And
so let's
10.2
look at what would you what have we always done? What's the best scene in 10.2? Probably the concert scene, right? Does
Yes.
anything
Yes,
did
hands
anything
down.
in Opera Omnia reach that level and stay
Reach
with
that
you?
peak.
Did anything here really stay with you the way that scene kind of from 10.2 stays with you?
I mean, it's hard to say because I originally played 10.2 over 10 years ago, and that concert scene and the YRP in position, that still sticks out. This game, I think the Ace stuff, there is actually a bit in Yuna's section. She tries to say YRP in position, but because Riku's not there and a bunch of people from other games are there, she has to do the bit. She's like, Yuna, Pain, Zidane, Warrior of Light, in position. And it's just really goofy.
If they put that into Opera Omnia, contact me because I'm fucking dropping everything to play that. Then
That moment's great. I really enjoy the, Lon in position. Chibi looking motherfucker. Yeah, I think that the Ace section, I think it worked for me.
Okay.
It really, stood above what 10.2
maybe you
want to
use your next pick for Type 0. Fuck, I really don't.
I think that game would make me throw up.
Yeah,
so
I actually
no.
should point out I have tried to play Type 0 multiple times, and it gives me a headache every single time I try.
So, what do we think? I mean, if y'all aren't convinced it can be below 10-2, everything seems to be going up against 10-2 and then crashing back against...
It's the real Donkey Kong Country 3 of this list.
I get
which
that.
is, when I was on the Hardcore Gaming 101, top 47,858 games of all time show, that was like it's a playable, okay game. Like, everything below that was like nope. It's like, I would not touch that. I would rather play DKC3.
Here's what I would say. Gino, if you agreed to put Opera Omnia below 10-2, here's my compromise. Is the Mason-Dixie line now becomes Opera Omnia. Opera Omnia now becomes the standard of do we recommend this game or this thing. Did you get that Mason-Dixie line reference, Jeff?
Yeah, I don't like it, but I get it.
Dixon, but close enough.
Okay, so... yeah, I think that's probably fine for me. I think it's...
if you below Opera Omnia, you don't get a choice. You should not play those games or anything below Opera Omnia.
I mean...
here's what I would also say. This is probably the highest we will ever rank a Final Fantasy mobile game.
Oh, I'd be shocked if one got better than this.
It's not it's not that tower defense bullshit Final Fantasy 15 thing they made, because Jesus Christ.
That came pre-installed on my phone and I hated it.
Oh, King's Knight?
I hated that it was there.
That King's Knight remake thing?
I think so.
I downloaded I have a version of that I need to put on my phone to see what it is, because they talk about it so often in 15. And I actually bought a loose copy of King's Knight for the Famicom at some point.
And you know what's the best part, Jeff?
It's a terrible game.
That game has now become incompatible with certain Android phones now. And so when you get to those parts of the story and it directs you to do that shit, you can't fucking learn what they're talking about.
Yeah. I mean, it's like delisted, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, it is.
As opposed to All the Bravest, which is not.
I don't think... is World of Final Fantasy technically a mobile game? No, it's a full-fledged thing. It's just, a fan service, a delivery system. No, yeah, I think this is the highest we'll ever rank a mobile game. And to be perfectly honest, if you did decide to really fight to rank... I don't think it's better than Legend of the Crystal. I will tell you that.
Yes. No, that's its ceiling.
Jeff, do we want to
I will not argue.
The mobile guys, the mobile people a bone? I don't know. I've said this before, and I'll say this again. Of all the Final Fantasy games that we've played, like Warm and Cold, I feel like I have warmed on Final Fantasy X-2. I don't think it's a good follow-up to 10. I also appreciate it for what it is, which is it made money to help Square survive its darkest hour. And then also there are some really interesting ideas and gameplay mechanics in there. Like the dress sphere system is so good they decided to bring it back in Lightning Returns because they realized that the original combat system, that paradigm shifting bullshit, was not good.
I like the combat in 10-2. My problem with 10-2 is there's actually so much more that isn't the combat.
Yeah.
Like, there's the section where you have to play detective. There's the section where you go to a tournament.
Now that I've kind of realized where we all are with this game, and we were able to have this discussion, which I really do value this discussion, I don't want to seem like I'm going to die on the hill of Final Fantasy X-2. I'm not. I don't want to. I don't want to die on that hill.
Yeah, like this is not a difficult, fraught question for me. It's like, which one of these would I rather play? And it's 10-2. Like it's no... I ain't judging you. I think it's okay if you like your phone game. Frankly, that you have had so much fun with this thing, like watching you and Em have fun with this well after I stopped, frankly, has made me like the game more.
Yeah.
Like, because I was pretty ready to just be like, yeah, whatever.
I'm happy for people who are happy about this game. And I'm glad that at the very least, while I still stand that I do view that this game is a form of gambling, you can at least play this game without fucking yourself up in a way that does not put you, your family members, and yourself at a financial disadvantage.
Yeah, there's more to this game's combat than I anticipated. Like I said, I don't think I'm going to die on a hill here. I think it's better than 10-2. If you both think 10-2 is better than Opera Omnia, I'm fine with that.
I do want to respect Em. Em would probably rank this more than Final Fantasy X-2, so we would be 50-50. I hate to say this.
There's a classic way to solve that.
Okay.
Flip a coin?
Hell yeah.
I'm totally down. Wait, right now in this podcast right now, are there any objections to flipping a coin?
No, because I don't care about either of these games enough.
Gino, get a coin.
I don't have a coin readily available. Do one of you have a coin?
I'm going to random.org and pulling up a virtual coin.
Ah.
Okay.
Can we all agree that random.org is a safe, good place for a random number?
Yes.
It's better than, say, some of the... Man, as someone who plays D&D and now Pathfinder, like, finding places to roll virtual dice because you get to certain classes where you literally roll a bucket of dice, the online digital dice rolling websites you end up going to are really fucked up.
Okay, we will be flipping a classic US 1 cent penny.
I want a buffalo nickel.
Might be able to do that.
Do it.
Buffalo nickel. Found it. Okay. Gino, you're the host.
I don't know if I've ever told you. My dad collects hay pennies. Do you know what a hay penny is?
I do, yes.
Okay, yeah.
It's
He's
half a
got,
penny.
I want to say, 1,000.
It's an
Wow.
awful lot.
That's a lot of hay
He's
pennies.
got a lot of
Gino,
pennies.
you're in favor of putting this above 10 too. Heads or tails?
Yes, heads.
It is heads.
All right.
Hell
It's
yeah!
above 10 too.
Yep, I'm fine with that.
But
It's
from
okay.
hell's depths I stab at thee, it's not going above 5. Legend of the Crystals. Like I will tell you, I literally joined a bad movie club and I got 3 picks. And one of my picks is Legend of the Crystals.
Have you watched it yet with them?
We put all of the names of the movies that we wanted to nominate. So I went with Spice World.
Hell yeah.
Spice World, House 1977, the Japanese horror film, and then Final Fantasy V, Legend of the Crystals. And that bad movie
Hell
club, we watching Legend of the Crystals at some point, and I'm gonna be fucking digging it. All right.
Okay, so our new list is now FF9 at the top forever, followed by 10, followed by 7, followed by 8, followed by 5, followed by 12, followed by the trading card game, followed by 1, followed by Final Fantasy V Legend of the Crystals, the movie, followed by Dissidia.
Wait, whoa.
Followed
You gotta
by
say Opera Omnia because
Opera
people
Omnia.
will, in hindsight, think that you're ranking Dissidia NT or some shit like that.
Followed by Dissidia, Final Fantasy Opera Omnia.
Okay.
Followed by 10-2, followed by 13-2, followed by Advent Children, followed by The Spirits Within, followed by Mobius, followed by Last Order, FF7, then 10-2 Last Mission, then FF2, then FF11, and then finally, in the trash heap of history, Final Fantasy 13. Which means now it is time for me to pick again. I want to pick a good game.
Oh shit.
I want to play a good game. Final Fantasy VII Remake.
Yay!
All right. Well, I was already in the middle of replaying that game. All right, cool. I'm going to hazard to say that we are going to need to cut that up into multiple episodes. Where do you think, Gino, is because we actually sometimes do have viewers that play along with us. What do you think is the logical stopping point for Remake Episode 1? Reactor 2?
Maybe, do you think Wall Market?
Oh yeah, Wall Market's better. How much of the Wall Market do you want to do? Do you want to be all the way through Honeybee Inn? Do I need to get a hand massage?
You need to get dropped in the sewer.
That seems fair. Yeah, Jeff, I also think you understand where that would be.
I have played and completed that game, and my PS4 is out on loan to someone else, but I am ready to talk about it, start to finish. I'm good on it. Spoilers, it's pretty good.
It's pretty good. I look forward to talking about Cloud's fucked up door.
Yeah. God.
I'm looking forward to talking about ghosts that I don't know what they're about yet.
Looking forward to talking about the house. Maybe the funniest thing that happened last year.
God, yeah, you're right.
Hysterical. God damn it.
The house, the summons. This is gonna be good. This is good shit.
That house tries to gentrify you.
Oh yeah, this is gonna be a solid candidate for the indictment against capitalism category.
Potentially. So next up on the Ranking of Fantasies, we will be talking about Final Fantasy VII Remake. Thank you, ZP.
I promise to eat the salami correctly next time.
Thank you, Jeff.
I, too, promise to eat the salami correctly.
I'll put it in my mouth all the way in.
Thank you, Em. Em stepped out at one point because this podcast went too long. Thank you, Em, for the time you were here. And just a reminder, if you want to get in touch with the show, you can do so at DeepListensPod on Twitter, deeplistens.libsyn.com. We've got our comment sections and deeplistenspodcast@gmail.com. You can send us an email. You can also support the show on patreon.com/deeplistens. Talk to chuckleheads like us and suggest other games for us to play. Till next time, peace!